Perfect.
But can no.
Eleanor, keep an eye on the APJ email, the contact email, just in case people didn't get my email and are having trouble with the link.
I just realized I'm muted. I can do that. But with sharing my screen, I don't
Oh,
know.
yes, you can't do that. Let me
Yeah,
see if I think I can log into it.
I can try to log into it on my phone.
Well, let me see. I think I can do it really quickly,
Okay.
actually.
Okay, we have a participant.
And I see.
Is that a fist?
Should I? Yes. Should I wait till 7 to let? Oh, it is 7. Great. Never mind.
Hmm.
Welcome, everybody. We're going to take a couple of more minutes and let people sign in, especially since we had to send a new Zoom link. While we're waiting on people to come in, if you want to just write in the chat where you're joining us from today, that'll help us as we get started. All right. Well, as people come in, if you can write in the chat where you're joining from today, that would be great. Thank you for joining us for our webinar, introducing APJ's voter guide. So I'm thankful that we are at this point. We've worked hard to get this voter guide researched and established and developed, and we're excited to introduce it tonight. I just want to make sure you guys know what the evening's going to look like. We're going to have an introduction of the voter guide. We'll show you some slides just so you can see what it looks like. And then we're going to interview our voter guide teams and hear a little bit about their process and their experience. And then we're going to give you some information about how to access this voter guide to distribute in your community as you think it might be helpful to you and your neighbors and friends. So I'm Michelle Kirtley. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Board of Trustees of the Association for Public Justice. And APJ is the action arm of the Center for Public Justice. And we basically help push the thoughtful, deliberate policy work of CPJ across the finish line by mobilizing voters to engage directly with their elected officials. Our goal is to form prayerful communities across the nation that love their neighbors through political activity for the flourishing of all. And most recently, we've been particularly active in Michigan, Virginia, Pittsburgh, Texas, and North Carolina. And the voter guides that you're going to hear about tonight, we have one generic national one, and then one specific to Pennsylvania and one for Virginia. So you can ask questions at any time throughout the event. Just put it in the chat and we'll have a time for questions at the end. And then you're going to get a follow-up email after the event today with access to the resources that we mentioned and a form to order the voter guides. So we're going to start today with Art Hooker, who's my fellow co-chair for the Board of Trustees, and he's going to interview our voter guide team. And the first team we're going to interview is the Virginia team. And that team was led by Jerry Herbert, who's also on our board. Jerry's been involved with CPJ and its precursors since it was founded in 1977. And with his degree in political science, he's taught graduate and undergraduate courses in American politics and Christian political discipleship for over 40 years. So he led a team of 3 folks, and we'll let him tell you about that team in just a minute. So Art, take it away.
All right. Well, Michelle, thank you for opening us up. That was great. I'm excited about what we have today because this has been a long time in the making, and we're excited because we have Jerry and Christy here. So we'll be going through this. We'll start with Jerry. Jerry, tell me. So I know we're going to get into the heat of this, but talk to us a little bit about why this project is important. Like why do we even do this?
Well, one of the reasons that I say to myself is that because we can land the airplane. As we know, CPJ has been involved in deep study of various issues and events that occur for the last 30 years or more. But oftentimes it doesn't connect with people who have to make a political decision on the ground, especially if you're a citizen. What does it mean for my citizenship responsibilities? And this is one effort. This voter guide is one effort by APJ to help land the airplanes so that people in their local communities have some help in fulfilling their political discipleship in their local communities. In this particular case, it would be being able to evaluate and understand where their candidates, they're running for Congress or the Senate, where they stand and whether or not they are reflecting the kinds of perspectives that our people who want to follow Jesus in the public square could appreciate. So that's the important thing. I think is the thing that makes it really come to life and make it possible for the average student, the average citizen to really fulfill their political discipleship responsibilities.
Oh, I love that. It's sort of, I love how you led off where you were saying it's basically it helps us land the plane. Because a lot of the things we've been doing has been very philosophically strong and we learn.
Yeah.
But now we're looking at how do we we've learned, we've been praying, but what do we do, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I love that. So Jerry, you've had a couple of years working in higher ed and
Yeah.
working with uh, with folks. So tell us a little bit about your team and the process of putting this all together.
I had two good folks that helped us in this. So the team of three, and we divided the state that has 11 districts,
Hmm.
congressional districts, and so we divided them up with a team of four or five districts, depending on how we divided them, and then each of us uh, tried to do a deep research into the various campaigns in those particular districts. Um, I also did the additional the senatorial race. So that's the way we sort of divided the work responsibilities. And from my own experience, it was really interesting how these different candidate campaigns presented themselves in media, on on the internet or in uh, social media, and it it became clear to me that the people who were already the incumbents who were already in office
Hmm.
were far more expansive in how to get a hold of me. Here are my different addresses. Email me, give me a call, contact my staff. But those who were challenging incumbents had a wide range of. Some were very difficult to get a hold of,
Hmm.
and others were easy. So I mean, uh, I don't know why there was that difference. It may have been money.
Hmm.
Some of the challengers
So you're
probably
saying
weren't
that it
well.
was harder to reach the challengers than it was the incumbents, is what you're saying?
Yes, yes.
Interesting.
Although it is the challengers who have typically been more eager, once we contact them, been more
Hmm.
eager to respond to the questionnaire
Hmm.
because they want to get their message out, and they know that the incumbent has got an advantage on them. So it was really I hadn't expected that. I had expected that it would be relatively easy to get a hold of people who are running for office who want to get their message out. But it was a wide spectrum of different hoops you had to
Hmm.
jump through to get in touch
Hmm.
with some of these folks, some of the candidates.
So what you're saying is the process with you and the two others, I'm assuming they're students, it was a little harder than you expected because the reaction was a little bit different because normally the incumbents, no, normally the challengers are excited because they want to get their name out there. And
Yeah,
so
you'd
you had a little
think.
bit less. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, now I haven't received all of the responses because we asked the candidates whether they were incumbents or challengers to turn in their questionnaire, send their questionnaire directly to APJ. Some of them went ahead and copied some of us on the team so that we got a copy of it, but uh, many of them probably didn't. And so I haven't really received personally that information yet. But it seemed to me that once we got in touch with some of these challengers, they were eager to sort of understand why we were doing this and where the information was going to be used and how it was going to be used. And when they found out that we were trying to distribute these widely to our partner organizations and people in various churches and faith-based organizations in the state, they were quite forthcoming.
Hmm. And what do you think prompted that?
Well, I think it was because they were, well, the latest conversation I had about a week ago, I think what it was that they were a little bit suspicious
Hmm.
about why we were asking them these questions.
Hmm.
I'm not the incumbents, but some of the challengers were a little bit unsure of why this information, why we were asking and what the information would be used for. And
Hmm.
I suspect they were thinking that we were probably some of this, uh, you know, uh, negative research going on with different candidates, and they didn't want to be falsely presented.
Mm.
And if it's an opponent who's researching me, I got to be pretty careful about how I respond. But
Okay.
once they understood what we were, then I think, especially again, the challengers were pretty forthcoming.
Wow. It's kind of interesting thing because especially in this era of I'm resisting saying one word because it would sound like I was partisan, but in this era of like
Yeah,
artificial intelligence, you know what I mean? It's like
yeah,
all these different things. So that would make you a little suspicious, I could see that.
it could.
That's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah,
But it's one of those things where you don't expect. There's all these new things in the new era of media, where we're doing that.
yeah.
Um, so I mean, so we're looking at this. So tell me a little bit about. So these were things that were sort of obstacles that you had to overcome. What did you learn from doing this guide? Because I felt like it'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, what I learned was that, we say and we feel like we're in a very polarized situation where the progressives in the Democratic Party and the conservatives in the Republican Party are really at extremes. Um, and in some cases, that proved true, I think, in terms of the candidates we were talking to, especially again among challengers. Uh, the incumbents were less polarizing. I think they'd won. I don't think they had anything to prove, unless they were in a tight race. But most of the candidates, as we all know, most of the candidates have pretty safe districts. It's very
Mhm.
few are actually competitive.
Mm.
But I would say what I learned was that those candidates who had very little chance of winning, so they
Mm.
were their opponent, the incumbent, was in a quote safe district.
Mm.
So the candidates who were trying to, unseat them, they pretty well fit the stereotype of a polarizing, or they would talk the way that their national candidates would talk.
Interesting.
They would organize their positions in the way that would resonate with what we would recognize as a sort of a left-right difference between people on these issues.
Hmm.
But the ones who were in competitive districts, at least in the ones that I looked at, they were a lot less. They were a lot more nuanced, a lot less
Hmm.
clearly. The language they used was a lot less radical or extreme. It was
Hmm.
more nuanced, more as if they were really trying to find a way to convince people instead of just mobilizing their support or
Hmm.
their base. They were really trying to find ways to convince people that how their position was good,
Hmm.
was the best position. And I found that to be very interesting. And again, it shows how the problem of our political process right now is that so many districts are gerrymandered so that there's really not much competition. Most incumbents are in safe districts. Very few are like the states in the presidential election. Well, the same thing is true in congressional elections. Most of those districts have been gerrymandered so that we have safe districts. But on those that are competitive, those few districts that are competitive, there really is I think, a serious conversation going on trying to convince people, which is different from what we're told in the media of how
Hmm.
extreme people are and how polarized people are.
Hmm.
So that was actually encouraging to me. So
Hmm.
that was one thing. The second thing that I learned that was interesting was that it was so much fun to explain to these different candidates uh, what our position was in short, and then ask them their position. So, for example, we paid family leave. That's a typical progressive or liberal kind of issue. Yes, we're in favor of paid family leave.
Hmm.
Okay. But APJ, CPJ comes from a perspective that's saying, no, this is a supportive family. This is a pro-family kind of position. And
Mm,
we can even actually tie it in with our pro-life position. This is trying to, you know, help people flourish. I mean, we want to help families and people flourish in where they are. And so when we would come at it from that point of view, it was surprising for some folks. They would
mm,
say, well, wait a minute, you're you sound like a conservative when you're talking about pro-life, pro-family, but then you want to do this paid family leave thing, and that's usually a liberal thing. Where are you guys coming from?
mm,
And so it was really fun to be able to show them that in a very simple way, because I mean,
mm,
we were only talking about a couple issues that were that way, but it was fun to be able to show them that, yeah, there are people out there, APJ represents them, that are trying to find a fresh approach. We're not talking about being in the middle. We're
mm,
talking about coming at these things at an angle that, of course, we would say from our principal pluralist position, but
mm,
I would say from a more gospel-oriented position,
mm,
but didn't use that language when I was talking to a
mm,
candidate.
mm,
But I
mm,
did say principal pluralism, and we were trying to explain to them that we were coming at these issues in a way that liberated us from
mm,
the polarizing, conservative, progressive, uh, divide that we have in the political process today. That was fun to be able to
mm,
talk with folks like that and to begin to see them. What's going on? You guys,
mm.
who are you guys? What do you want? What are you doing this for? And it was fun to be able to have that kind of conversation.
I love that. Have you ever done this before?
No,
So like to be able to
I mean,
talk to them directly, that's
we had
probably
no
like
idea
a
what we
different
were doing.
experience.
The three of us. I mean, but okay, let's do it. Let's see what happens.
Mm,
I mean, I went online and we got Google to tell us how to do a voter guide. And there was
yeah.
12
And
steps and
you've
all that
seen
kind of
them.
stuff.
Yeah.
But we didn't know what we were doing. We were doing the best we could. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because you have to also be careful what you say because you're talking because essentially, like we're trying to create another way to do politics, another way to look at it.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful because like the natural words for me to be like, we're trying to find a new way forward, but we can't say that because that sounds like. So I think it's kind of interesting the wordplay. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
then the principle of pluralism is something you probably have to teach them about.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really cool. So you have this unique thing that you're doing, and I have two other follow up questions. You mentioned something about ranked choice, and I know that's something that you've been. That's it. The funny thing is, I learned a lot about that. And then we have Waltz ends up being
Yeah.
in the race, so it's interesting. So
Yeah.
did this talk to me in a concise way? Did this reinforce your views on this, or did it kind of like
Oh,
take it
yeah.
away?
And yes, it did. And as you know, or perhaps don't know, but in Virginia, the
Mm,
legislature has given local municipalities the opportunity, the freedom,
mm,
to have their elections ranked choice if they
mm,
desire to do so. And some of the jurisdictions have done that, including Arlington.
mm,
Uh, and so we could have a real conversation with these candidates in Virginia. Interestingly, some of them had no idea what that was, even though it's passed the legislature and it's been used by some of the regions in the state. And I guess that's understandable. But it was fun to have conversations with candidates in Virginia who were unaware that ranked choice voting was in fact an option at the municipal and county levels. And to talk them through what that would mean. And in fact, many of the candidates who were challenging sort of safe incumbents, who really these challengers really had a row to hoe uh, to try to win, they were the most interested and most to try to understand, if they didn't already, what ranked choice voting was, because it gave them a little bit of hope that it's possible. It's
mm,
possible that maybe they could have enough people in their district that could perhaps at least provide some opportunity for them to get more people to vote, and that might give them a bit of a leg up if they could. So that was interesting for me.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, and it's also educational as well. For those of us in Texas, that would be probably very disruptive. if, if we had that,
Yeah,
I'm sure it would be difficult, but I can imagine that being, we would have to do there could be a whole seminar about that. Um, so,
it's true.
so it's really cool. So you didn't, so obviously you didn't do this alone. We talked about your teammates. Can you talk a bit about like who the teammates were that you worked with and what was the process like working with them?
We met, uh, the three of us met online through Zoom maybe 3 or 4 times during the months that we were working
And
on
was
this.
this through an app? Did you find them, or how did you find these people?
No, they were APJ recommended them.
Amazing.
They were both of them. One's an attorney and who was in the process of planning her wedding. Oh,
Wow.
geez, she didn't have much time. And the other one, no, I think she was an attorney too. Oh, this is really embarrassing. Anyway, both of them were, they weren't they're not students. I mean, they're in the world, but they had both been interns with CPJ and been in the Civitas program with CPJ. And so I got the names from, they had responded to a request, I assume from APJ or CPJ, and they contacted me and we agreed to serve together.
That's amazing. So you did this with two attorneys. That's
Yeah,
great. Okay, so that feels kind of good. It feels kind of
I
safe.
don't know. I don't know the law. Yeah, it was. It was actually a good experience.
That's amazing. Well, thank you. Is there anything that shocked you in this process that you haven't shared already?
It turned out to be more fun than I thought. I wasn't shocking, but it was pleasant.
Hmm.
It was an awful lot of work, especially the early days when we began the initial investigation of the different candidates on the different districts. And when we found it was difficult to sort of contact and get in touch with some of these candidates, that was a bit difficult. But once we got rolling, it turned out to be pretty fun.
Wow. This is exciting. Thank you so much, Jerry.
Yeah,
Good work on this.
thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Thanks, Art. Now we'll move on to the Pennsylvania team. And Christy Wazinski led our team. She also has a long history with the Center for Public Justice and with justice issues, leading a school for a long time there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And now in her retirement, she's giving her efforts to us here at APJ. So now we're going to do the same thing. Pennsylvania is a very different state than Virginia. They have different issues on the table, and Christie's process was different from Jerry's. And Christie, unlike Jerry, didn't have a team, so she did this mostly on her own. So, Art, why
Wow.
don't you take it away with Christie?
Well, welcome, Chris. This is exciting, actually, because Pennsylvania is a different kind of place. During the elections, we learn more about Pennsylvania, I think, than we ever do. And so, and it's been interesting because I've had lots of experiences in Pennsylvania over the years, just driving through doing projects. So I think it's a really interesting place. But before we go in, do you want to tell us a little bit about like your background and why you have an interest in this topic?
Oh, I think I grew up liking to argue. We had during the Vietnam years, we had some great dinner table.
And your mic's a
Um,
little low. I can't really hear you that good.
okay, is this better?
Oh, much better. Yeah.
Okay, so I grew up arguing politics in the Vietnam era, and
Wow.
that places me as ancient. I know, but
It's not ancient. It's relevant. It's relevant because
well,
we could be going to war again. I'm joking.
oh my gosh,
Hopefully not.
don't say
Hopefully
that.
not.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
worry about it a lot. So anyway, I've always had an interest in politics, but I think by calling initially got guided toward education. But
Mm,
I grew up with a passion and parents who were passionate about justice.
mm,
It didn't always come out of there toward me anyway. It wasn't expressed as a faith issue.
mm,
And so then when I came to Christ, a lot of things made sense to me. So
Hmm.
leave it there.
Wow, that's so cool. So this has been a sort of a lifelong sort of passion and something that's had your attention and as you've seen how it directly connects with your faith over the years.
Yeah, that's a good summation.
Mhm.
It's good.
It's very
Yeah.
complicated when you look at it that way. So that's why I always enjoy hearing you. You know what I mean? Everything you say has such value to me. So with that being said, your process was a little different, and you were like a one-woman team representing Pennsylvania. So what resources did you use to gather your information?
Well, let me just correct a little bit. I
Okay.
wasn't a lone soldier out there. I had a lot of encouragement from friends and friends of APJ.
Hmm.
Um, but because of some illness,
Oh,
my chief partner, who was the main person for making contact with what would have been our team and what might still be our team,
okay.
um, I just had to kind of take on getting it done. And it, the difference in what I did and what Jerry's team did is it's huge. It's um, basically all I was able to do when I did not hear back from the various candidates is then I just went online and started researching
Hmm.
and tried to do a fair representation in their own words or in a nonpartisan uh, entities' words about them
Hmm.
that I came to trust. Just got that out in front of voters. So it's not at all. Wow, when I hear what Jerry did, that's what would have, as he said, that's what it would have made the project fun.
Hmm.
Um, to actually be engaging with candidates who were eager to talk about politics
Hmm.
in a kind of a principled way. So
Hmm. Oh, well, I found I think I get that because where he was sort of interfacing it seemed like your process became more research
yeah,
um, based.
yeah. But I was motivated to just get her done, and felt like I learned a lot from the
Mhm.
process, and I feel like the voters guide, um, as I and get some other people to engage members of churches and other individual believers. As we pass off that information, I think I gained enough that um, I can help them see the value of it and make sense of it for their own voting. But I think even more, make a here's the thing: I would like to see people see their political engagement as more than voting.
Mm.
And that's what I'm really hoping and praying for as we make this guide available to people in this Western Pennsylvania area.
Amen. Well, thank you for your hard work. I know that's not, I mean, it's a lot that goes into that. As a researcher and a person that has to reach out to people myself, sometimes to get people to respond, there are people that you have to call maybe 20 or 30 times,
Yeah,
which is a peculiar thing. So it's a certain skill set.
yeah,
So and then doing the research and then trying to hold it with fidelity. Um, even
yeah.
when, I just really thank you for that, for your work on that. Um,
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And so with that being said, I mean, since you're actually doing the research, you kind of because you have a deadline and a project, it does force you to dig into it. So when you were doing this, were you surprised by anything? Did anything pop up and you're like, oh wow, I would have never thought that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I'm cynical enough to be kind of surprised by my own surprise. I think that I had some people, as much as I was sort of on the surface fighting it,
Mm,
boxed into certain positions because of
mm,
their party affiliation. Um, I was surprised by a number of candidates here, particularly the state house candidates, which was they're interesting races in a lot of respects. But one is that the particularly as well, this is what Jerry said. Those who are not incumbents that are running are, in a certain sense, kind of a lot more interesting and a lot less set in their position. And I don't think it's because, and I really came to believe this, I don't think it's because they're waffling, and I think it's because they're not, they haven't engaged in the process of partisanshipizing, you know. They haven't really had to choose hard positions on certain things. Now, certain things that are in the national media, like the abortion issue and others, I think did push some candidates that were not incumbents into that. But I was even surprised by some candidates that are not incumbents, and they're very reticent to say what their own. They kind of said, my own personal position I'm going to keep private, because I feel like my job as Attorney General of the state, let's just say that as a kind of an example, is to basically enforce the rules of the state. In other words, the state constitution and other laws that the legislature would pass. So I guess bottom line is I was surprised that people aren't as hard and fast in a certain category. I think Jerry said something like that. So that was Western Pennsylvania is pretty divided. It's pretty divided, city versus rural, and it wasn't as divided as I thought it would be in terms of conservative versus more liberal positions. So.
So you're saying there's more nuance,
Yeah.
nuanced thinking versus the polarized sides is what you're saying?
Yeah, good. That's a good way of putting it. And so it makes me want to do what Jerry did, is get into conversations with these people to talk about exactly what do you mean by that, and where are you really, and would you consider this, and here's where we're coming from, that type of thing.
Yeah, I love that because it kind of brings things into a perspective when you're doing more localized politics. Because on the national stage, when you hear "Make America Great Again" and then you hear "A New Way Forward," in some worlds that they're saying the same thing to some people.
Yeah.
There's some people that might say a new way
sure.
forward is make America great again, make America great again is the new way forward. And it may not mean what it means to people, other people. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It may not, if you look at it in a partisan way, it feels a certain way. And if you look at the candidates, but if you just look at what that might mean to me in rural Pennsylvania versus the city, I think it's an interesting, I feel like you're in an interesting place.
Yep, we are. I understand it a little bit better than I used to. So yeah.
Yeah. For those of us that aren't familiar with that geography, can you explain it a little bit to us?
Well, Western Pennsylvania is clustered population-wise around a medium-sized city called Pittsburgh, and then north of us, Erie. But between Pittsburgh and Erie, it's almost all farmland, rural Pennsylvania. There are some larger towns, but then also going east toward Philadelphia, it's really rural. It's the population per square mile really drops. I would say maybe about 100 miles out of east of Pittsburgh. And then south, you start to encounter, you very quickly go south from Pittsburgh and you're in West Virginia.
Wow.
So, and that's
a
another
lot
whole
of difference. Yes.
Very, very different. Yeah. So So east and south are tend to be Appalachian
Mm-hmm.
kind of influence, and coal mines.
Okay.
Historically, people tied families, strong ties to the coal mines, and but then east and north, it's sort of rural Amish. There will be a
Mm-hmm.
lot of Amish uh, farms, sort of straight from about Indiana, PA to and through Lancaster and into the Philly area.
Oh, like the Kennett Square kind of area. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting. I think this
yeah.
is interesting. This is good. So, so given, I know you said earlier you want to do more of what Jerry did, but what you've learned so far, um, does it affect or change the way you think you might vote or interact politically in the future?
Well, yeah. Actually, I don't want to say how I'm going to vote, but
Mm,
it did it did soften me quite a bit,
mm,
in terms of where I draw the lines
mm,
between the right way to vote and the wrong way to vote.
mm,
Um, and it did more than anything else. It wanted me to engage these candidates the way Jerry did, to find out why they were posturing the way they're posturing, and could they were they open to seeing a third way,
mm,
or a fourth way, or a fifth way.
mm,
Um, it was interesting, but also somewhat disappointing that our the run for attorney general has about 5 people in it, and the the non-made parties were really diverse in their approach to the election in terms of giving. I gotta fix my screen here, but in terms of giving access to them, that will be a problem in the future. How we encourage these uh, non-democratic, non-Republican Party candidates um, to think of themselves not just as challenger to the system, but in engage them to see how they're really benefited by
mm,
you know a different kind of ballot.
mm,
And I think we're a ways away from there. I,
mm,
we're not anywhere near there, um, in terms of where Virginia is, but I could see that there's enough diversity of perspective represented by these non two party folks that
mm,
they could be a force for going that, helping promote that ranked choice. So
mm.
if
That is
that makes sense.
fascinating, right?
Yep.
That's an option. Yeah, I think that's very disruptive because I love that, and I've also learned it in systems that you shouldn't say the word disruption. People don't like that, but it's a
Yeah.
very cool
It's pretty
idea.
threatening. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But as we wrap up, this one thing I'm just curious about because I love watching political ads myself, and particularly some of them have been kind of funny because some of them really they go out of their way to paint the other certain lights. So I was curious what it would be like to be because I'm not in a battleground state and I'm watching really like I go out of my way to watch the ads. So what has that been like being in a battleground state? Like what are the TV watching the TV ads? What has that been like?
Yeah. So I sit at the TV and yell, "You're lying," because I'm not even sure exactly what's going on. Whether the ad was made early, and the candidate that the ad is trying to diss on is has changed their position, which
Mm,
is its own problem, or whether it just was convenient to cast the opponent, as a big enemy, and negator of their own position.
Hmm.
But we have several attack ads on right now that are just flat out inaccurate. If you go to the other candidate that you're dissing on, if you go to their website, it's not true. That's not their position on, say, abortion or the big issue in Pittsburgh is this whole thing about Nippon Steel and
Oh, wow.
whether U.S. Steel is going to partner with Nippon, and the unions are divided on it. And anyway, that's all not important to this discussion, but some of that stuff is just factually misrepresented, shall we say.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Christy. It's kind of cool. It's like you're kind of giving us the word of the word from the ground in the battle from the battleground, which we're going to be seeing a lot of in the next. Was it less? We're less than 30 days away. We're like 25 days away or something like that. So that's quite exciting. And we got to talk to Jerry. So thank you both for your work on the
Thanks.
voter guide and for sharing with us. And about to turn it back over to Michelle.
Thanks, Art. And thanks again, Jerry and Christy, for the great work that you guys have done on this voter guide. So now we're going to give you a preview of the guide. I'm going to walk through it. Eleanor, who's working with us at APJ, is going to put it on the screen here. And I'm going to walk through the Virginia one as an example, just to orient you all. This is on our website. The link will be dropped in the chat soon. And Eleanor is going to give you information about how to order the voter guide as well. But this is the first page of the Virginia voter guide. And Eleanor, you can go to the next one. So if it's printed in its hard copy form, it will be a booklet of 10 pages. So we have the table of contents and an introduction. You can go to the next one. And then we get into the heart of APJ's policies. So before we get into the candidates' positions, we summarize the key issues that APJ works on, as well as a little bit of our process. And the QR codes that you see there, they take you directly to those issue pages on either the issue pages on the APJ website, the toolkits that CPJ has produced that go along with that policy, so that anybody that you hand this to, if they want to know more information about the position that APJ, CPJ has on family supportive policy or religious freedom or ranked choice voting, you can go to those pages. In the case of ranked choice voting and payday lending, those QR codes take you not to a CPJ or APJ website, but to other websites that summarize those issues and processes. All right, Eleanor, next slide. And then you have information about the candidates themselves. So this is Virginia's guide. So there's a Senate election going on there. And so we tried to take, in many cases, the candidates didn't all give equal amounts of information about all of the issue areas that we were hoping to cover. But we summarized their positions either based on answers to the questionnaires or research that Jerry and his team did. We summarized their position on all of these issues. We will, and we haven't done this yet, but we will put, for those who did submit answers to the questionnaires, we'll put their answers on the website. And at least we'll put the questionnaires up so you can see the questions that we asked people. We haven't done that yet, but this is a summary because we had to keep the booklet in a reasonable length, but you'll see the Senate, and then we went district by district for the U.S. House candidates. And I don't have all of those here, but Eleanor, you can go to the next one. But we went district by district. And we also included here voting information so that you can figure, folks would have right in their hands information about where to vote and who was on the ballot and absentee voting and all of those very practical voting issues. And then Eleanor, next slide. And then what we included here at the end is we don't take positions on any of the candidates here because we're a 501c4. We could have done that, but at this point in where APJ is, and honestly where the political landscape is, we didn't want to take positions on most of these candidates. But we did want to provide a little level setting on why it's both important to vote and why voting isn't going to determine the future of the world as we know it. This is a nice article that's written by a shared justice fellow that CPJ put out about voting that we included here at the end. So all of this is on our website, and then we'll talk about getting hard copies as well. So this is Virginia's version. We also have one for Pennsylvania. Now, for the state house races, because Christie's in Western Pennsylvania, most of those are from Western Pennsylvania, and we have put the information about all of those state house candidates on the website. That's not going to be in the hard copy booklet just because it was getting too long. And then we also produced a national version that just has information on the presidential candidates and how they, the positions that they've taken in each of our 6 issue areas. So that's on our website as well. So Eleanor will put our order form on the screen, and we can take some questions. So any other questions? I see Joyce asked about our end product. So it is this voter guide. And oh, I should give you a little bit of information. When you see the form, on how to order. It's a Google form. It'll go straight to us where they're a little expensive to print and color all 10 pages. So if you want those, we are happy to send them to you, but we're asking for a suggested donation for those. If that is prohibitive for anybody, we're happy to cover that. We also have a quarter-page flyer that talks about the voter guide that has a QR code that'll go to the online PDF version, and we're happy to send you a stack of those to hand out and use as you'd like. And then, as we said, it's on the website you can send the links and use it in any way that you'd like in your community. And I should have said this earlier when we were talking, but part of what we envision here is that much as you heard both Jerry and Christy articulate, we hope that this will start a conversation about a different way to look at things, because we are putting positions together that we feel like reflect exactly what Jerry said, that reflect the gospel in the world and for the flourishing and of our neighbors. And that means putting positions side by side that people don't always expect in the same candidate, in the same organization for the same people to be in favor of. So we hope that people will use this in conversation with their friends and neighbors as a means of starting a conversation about a different approach to politics that isn't so polarizing. So with that, I'll take any questions that anybody has, either about the voter guide, how to order it, or you're welcome to ask Jerry and Christy questions about their process and what they encountered.
Will printable versions of the guides be on the website?
The order form, and you can, and
But
it's
if
in
we
a
want
PDF. If you wanted to print it yourself, you could do that because it's a PDF.
Okay, that's what I meant. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, and for the national one, we have not yet put the third-party candidates information in yet, but we're going to be doing that shortly. So you can see Harris and Trump's positions on the 6 issue areas that we're featuring in the voter guide, but we're going to add the American Solidarity Party, and then the other 3 parties that are on the ballot in most but not all states. There's not a single candidate that is not from the 2 major parties that's on the ballot in every state. But they are in many states, so we're going to add that information as well. But that's still to come. Any other questions? CPJ is not allowed to send information about APJ out because of the tax law, because they're a 501c3 and we're a 501c4. So we'll be sending links out to APJ's list, but our list is much smaller than CPJ's. So it's going to take individual people associated with CPJ to send that out to people in the CPJ orbit that aren't on our list. That's the work that we will all have to do ourselves. Any other questions? Well, as Art said earlier, we are only a few short weeks away from this election. So I invite you all to join me in um, praying both for all of the candidates, for our country, for voters, and even as you guys have seen, prayers for all of the misinformation that's swirling around the natural disasters in Florida and here in my home state of North Carolina. I suppose I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was surprised at how very, very quickly relief became politicized. So we'll pray that the Lord we know he will accomplish his purposes and that his people will reflect well and hold up his name and character in the process. All right, well, join me as we pray to close out this evening. Father, we thank you that you are good, that you have good purposes for this world, for our neighbors and friends, for our communities, that you long to see people flourish and live into all that we were created to be and do. I pray that we would each have opportunities to take that mission seriously, even in these coming days before the election. We pray that you would use the work that Jerry and Christy and Eleanor and Caroline and Chandler and others have done, that you would use that to accomplish your purposes, that this work would bear fruit. That even as Jerry and Christy said earlier, that the opportunities to engage candidates, to cause them to pause and see that there are people who think differently and not in the same boxes and not with the same divisiveness and vitriol. Lord, we pray that that would be an opening that you can use to bring about good change in Virginia and in Pennsylvania and in all of the places in which we live. May your kingdom come and may your will be done through APJ, through CPJ, and through the work of everyone that's on this call and that will receive this guide. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you all for joining us. Good night.